Her body was failing. Her breath was weak. Her voice gone. All she wanted was to see her dog one last time. The nurses hesitated. Dogs weren't allowed, especially not in ICU, but her son begged. Her eyes had flickered at the name Max. They called in a special favor, and soon an old golden retriever was walking gently through sterile white halls toward her room. When he got there, what he did was nothing short of a miracle. Everyone watching knew this dog understood, and the moment he touched her hand, everything changed, like share, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. We read every comment. The machines hummed softly in the background, a constant, impersonal rhythm that no longer felt like it belonged to her. Oxygen hissed quietly through the nasal tube. The monitor's green lines spiked and dipped in gentle patterns, but everyone in that room knew what it meant. She was slipping away. The nurses, trained in quiet compassion, moved carefully around her, their shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The air smelled like antiseptic and plastic tubing, cold, clean, and strangely lifeless. Eleanor Parker had once been the kind of woman who filled rooms with her laugh. A retired music teacher, she used to bake cookies for her neighbors, hum old jazz tunes while tending her flower beds, and walk her golden retriever, Max, every evening down the same tree-lined street. Now her hands lay still atop thin hospital sheets, pale and nearly translucent, marked by time, by IVs, by the weight of life lived long and now nearly over. She hadn't spoken in over a day. The doctors called it the final stage. Her lungs were deteriorating. Her organs were slowing. Her body was making the quiet decision to let go, but her mind, in the rare flickers of awareness she still had, was clinging to something, to someone, Max. The framed photo beside her bed stood quietly, a witness to everything. In it, she was vibrant and beaming, crouched beside a young golden retriever with eyes like polished honey and ears slightly too big for his head. He looked up at her in the photo the way only dogs do, with unfiltered trust and undiluted love. It had been taken nearly a decade ago, on the day she adopted him. He'd been timid, rescued from a difficult past, but with her, he bloomed. They both had. Now Eleanor was dying, and Max was all she could think about. Her son, Daniel, sat vigil beside her, his elbows resting on his knees, hands wringing together in worry. He hadn't left the hospital for 2 days. His beard was unshaven, his eyes ringed with exhaustion, but he stayed, watching her chest rise and fall, waiting for signs. For anything. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking, "it's okay to rest." But her eyelids fluttered faintly. A tremor passed across her fingers. Then something, a breath, a shift, and her lips barely moved. Max. It was a whisper too thin to catch, barely formed, but Daniel heard it. He straightened in his chair, leaned closer. "What did you say?" he asked, gently brushing her wispy gray hair from her forehead. She didn't answer, but her eyes had opened just a little, and they were searching. Not the room, not him. Beyond. He turned toward the photo, picked it up, and held it in front of her. Her eyes stopped, focused. The tiniest movement pulled at the corner of her mouth. A trace of recognition, a trace of life. "Max," he said again, louder this time. "Your boy. You want to see him?" Her hand twitched. Daniel stood up, walked to the door. He didn't care about protocol. He didn't care about hospital policy. He cared that his mother, a woman who had lived her life giving warmth to everyone else, had asked for one thing. Just one. He found the night nurse, a kind-eyed woman named Carla who'd been checking Eleanor's chart. "She asked for Max," he said. "Her dog. He's still alive." "He's with my wife, please." "Just for a few minutes," Carla hesitated. "ICU doesn't normally allow—" "She's dying," he said, his voice breaking. "You heard her?" "She asked for him," Carla paused, then quietly nodded. "I'll talk to the supervisor." No promises. Back in the room, Eleanor's eyes were open again. Barely, but enough. Enough to show that somewhere inside the failing machinery of her body, something was still very much alive. A memory, a bond, a love too deep to die easily. Daniel sat again. He held her hand, rubbed her fingers gently. "Hang on, Mom," he whispered. "He's coming." And somewhere, down the hallway, outside this building, Under a soft, early evening sky, Max was waiting, sensing a shift in the air, as if he already knew. Outside Eleanor's hospital room, Daniel stood at the nurse's station, hands clenched, heart pounding. He wasn't an angry man, never had been, but the pressure building inside him now was a mix of grief, desperation, and something else, a son's final duty. His mother had given everything to him, and now all she wanted in return was the comfort of her dog. Just one moment, one goodbye. Carla, the night nurse, returned from the other wing, her face unreadable. The charge nurse said we need special approval. From upstairs, Daniel felt the floor shift beneath him. Upstairs? He repeated, his voice flat. The administration, she clarified softly. ICU doesn't allow animals unless it's a registered therapy dog, and only with prior clearance. He stared at her for a moment. She has maybe hours. You understand that, right? Carla sighed. She did. Anyone who'd spent time in this ward understood what last wishes really meant. The clinical rules, the policy binders, they were designed for routine care, not moments like this. But hospitals moved slowly, even in the face of death. I'm going to call my wife, Daniel said, pulling out his phone. Max is with her right now. He's a 10-year-old golden retriever. Calm, quiet, better behaved than most humans I know. If there's a chance, I'll back you up, Carla interrupted, lowering her voice. If you can get the dog here soon, I'll see what I can do to stall the night lead. Just don't bring attention to it. Keep it quiet. You understand? Daniel nodded, overwhelmed with gratitude. He called home immediately. His wife, Rachel, picked up after the first ring. She asked for Max, he said, cutting straight to it. There was a pause on the other end. Just now? She said his name, Rach. She hasn't spoken in over a day. Oh, my God, Rachel whispered. Okay, I'm on my way. Use the side entrance, north lot, Daniel added. Carla's helping us. Don't let security see the leash. I'll bring his bed, too, she said, so he doesn't slip on the floor. And the red bandana, the one she likes. He hung up, his hands shaking. He turned back toward the room. Inside, Eleanor hadn't moved, but something about the air felt different. The afternoon sun had faded. Evening had crept in, painting soft blue shadows on the walls. The framed photo still sat by her side, its glass catching the dim light. Her hand, limp a moment ago, now rested a little closer to it. Daniel sat beside her again. He's coming, Mom. Max is on his way. He didn't know if she could hear him, but he talked anyway, about how Max still loved the red ball, even though his legs were slower now. How he still ran to the door when he heard the word walk. How, just last week, he had sniffed around the backyard like he was chasing 1,000 old memories. You raised us both, Daniel whispered, brushing his thumb gently across her knuckles. I'm just the human one. Minutes passed slowly. Monitors beeped. Nurses passed by the doorway in hushed procession. Outside the hospital, city lights began to flicker on, one by one, as the sky turned the color of ash and lavender. Then came the text, "We're outside." Side lot, Daniel jumped up, told Carla. She nodded briskly and walked with him to the stairwell, not the elevator, to avoid attention. When they reached the door, Rachel was waiting in the shadows, eyes red, Max sitting calmly beside her. The dog's gray-muzzled face perked up the moment he saw Daniel. His tail wagged once, slow, thoughtful, as if he knew this visit was different. Come on, buddy, Daniel whispered, kneeling. She's waiting. They moved quickly but quietly. Max didn't bark, didn't pull on the leash. He walked as if he understood the sacredness of this mission. His nails clicked gently against the linoleum as they entered through the back hallway. Carla watching their path, subtly guiding them. When they reached Eleanor's door, Daniel paused. Stay here, he told Rachel. She nodded, eyes wet, clutching Max's bed and the red bandana. Daniel entered first. His mother's chest still rose and fell, slow and labored. Mom, he whispered, placing his hand on hers again. He's here. He stepped back. Carla gave a gentle nod. Rachel released the leash, and Max, as if pulled by some ancient invisible thread, walked slowly into the room. The golden retriever approached the bedside, eyes locked on Eleanor. He didn't bark, didn't whimper. He simply walked, each step quiet and deliberate, until his nose nearly touched the back of her hand. Then he stopped and waited. The room fell completely silent the moment Max entered, not the kind of silence that feels awkward or empty. This was a silence filled with awe, tension, and something else. Reverence. Even the machines, those relentless background rhythms of the ICU, seemed to dull their urgency. The gentle whir of the oxygen, the soft beeping of the heart monitor, it all faded into the background, as if the room had given itself permission to pause. Max approached slowly, the loose sway of his aging, golden frame steady and deliberate. His fur was speckled with white around the muzzle, and his eyes held the kind of still, deep understanding that only dogs, and perhaps those closest to death, ever seemed to possess. His nose twitched once, as if catching the familiar scent of someone who had once been his whole world. Daniel stood by the wall now, hands over his mouth, watching. Rachel knelt just outside the doorway, not daring to enter. Max paused at the foot of the bed, lifted his head, and looked up at Eleanor, and something in her responded, her breath, which had been shallow and spaced, the ghost of a rhythm, caught suddenly in her throat. Not pain, not distress, but a recognition. A flicker, her hand twitched, her lips parted. Barely, Max placed one paw up on the mattress. Slow, careful, no rush, and leaned forward until his nose touched the back of her hand. No one moved. Eleanor exhaled. A tear slid down the side of her face, slow and quiet, like everything else about her now. Her fingers, once stiff and still, began to curl just barely toward the warmth that now rested on her skin. Daniel's knees gave out, and he sank into the chair, eyes wide. "Oh, my God," he whispered. Max didn't bark. He didn't nudge or whine. He simply stood there, half on the bed, head lowered, eyes never leaving hers. His breathing was slow and measured, as if syncing with hers. For a moment, a fragile, sacred moment, it was just the two of them in that room. Time ceased to exist. And then Eleanor's hand moved, not involuntarily, not as a spasm, but with intent. She reached, two fingers brushed through the soft fur on Max's ear. Her wrist trembled with the effort, but her expression, for the first time in days, softened. The lines in her face, worn and deep from illness and age, seemed to relax. Her lips moved again. This time, the word was clear: Max. The nurses in the hallway froze. Carla, watching from the door, covered her mouth with one hand. Her eyes were wide, wet. Eleanor's breathing, though still labored, had shifted. She was present, aware. And Max, sensing everything, inched closer, placing his second paw on the bed, resting his chin beside her arm. He let out a long, low breath, almost a sigh, and settled there. No command, no training, just instinct, pure, unshakable love, the kind that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that simply knows when it's needed. Daniel moved to the side of the bed and gently placed Eleanor's fingers deeper into Max's fur. "She's holding him," he whispered to Rachel. Barely believing it, Rachel stepped into the room slowly, setting down Max's bed and the red bandana, the one Eleanor had always tied around his neck on their walks. She held it in her hands now, almost unsure if she should place it around him again. But Max raised his head slightly, looked at her, then at the bandana, then rested his chin back on Eleanor's wrist, as if saying, "It's okay. Let her remember." Rachel moved forward and tied it gently, loosely around his neck. It framed his white muzzle like a badge of honor. Eleanor blinked slowly, her eyes fluttering in a way that said, "I see you." Max let out a small, almost imperceptible whine, not of sadness, but of longing, as if remembering all their walks, their lazy mornings, the laughter she'd given him during thunderstorms when he'd been scared, as if telling her, "You were my whole life, too." Then her hand went still again, but the tension wasn't there. No panic, no alarms, just stillness. Daniel leaned in, checking. Her chest rose, shallow but steady. She was still here, and somehow more here than she'd been in days. No one spoke. Even the machines seemed to lower their tone, respecting the reunion, the moment, the miracle. In that tiny quiet room filled with grief and love and memory, Max stayed by her side, a guardian not against death, but against loneliness. And somewhere deep in Eleanor's fading consciousness, peace returned. The room held its breath. Max remained still, nestled against Eleanor's side, like a soldier who'd finally come home. His body pressed gently into hers, as if to say, "You're not alone now. I'm here." Her fingers, once trembling, now rested quietly in the waves of his fur, her touch growing softer by the minute, not weaker, but more at ease. Daniel sat on the other side of the bed, watching. There was something sacred in the silence. He wasn't thinking about hospital bills, or phone calls, or the inevitability they all knew was coming. He was thinking about his mother, not just her body, but her soul, and the truth that somehow, even at the edge of death, she had come back to herself. Just enough. Just long enough. Just for this. Rachel stood in the corner, arms crossed over her chest, tears streaking silently down her cheeks. She'd never seen anything like it. No one had. The woman who had barely opened her eyes in 48 hours was now cradled in the presence of the dog she loved most, and somehow that had pulled her back, even if just for a moment. Nurse Carla peeked in gently. Her voice was low, reverent. "Everything okay?" Daniel nodded. "Better than okay." The monitors beeped on. Her heart rate hadn't changed much, still slow, still irregular, but it was steady. No alarms, no panic, just the soft, rhythmic pulse of someone who wasn't ready to go quite yet. Max shifted slightly, careful not to disturb her. His head rested against her arm now, and his eyes, half-lidded, calm, flicked up toward her face every few seconds, checking, watching, guarding. And then it happened. Eleanor smiled. It was small, faint, a ripple across her lips more than a movement. But it was unmistakable. A smile that didn't come from relief or medication. It came from recognition, from presence, from joy. Daniel leaned closer. "She's smiling," he said aloud, not believing it. Carla walked in now, stepping quietly to the foot of the bed. "She heard you," she said softly. He did. Eleanor's eyes fluttered open one last time. Not wide, not strong, but enough. They met Max's, and in that exchange, everything unspoken between them, 10 years of love, companionship, and unbreakable loyalty passed through the silence. Then, like a wave gently receding from shore, she began to let go. Her breath softened. Her fingers released. Her eyelids lowered, but the peace that settled on her face remained. No fear. No pain, just release. Daniel didn't cry at first. He simply sat there, holding her hand in one and Max's fur in the other, suspended between sorrow and gratitude. Max didn't move. Not for a long while. He lay beside her, eyes closed now, breathing in time with the quiet hum of the machines. The doctors came. Quiet, respectful. No rush. No urgency. Time slowed. Rachel placed a hand on Daniel's back. "She waited for him," she whispered. He nodded. "She did more than that. She came back for him." Eventually, Daniel stood. He leaned down, kissed his mother's forehead, still warm, still familiar, and whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything. And thank you for showing us how to love like that." He turned to Max. The dog was still curled beside her, tail flicking just once, almost like a final salute. "Come on, buddy," Daniel said gently. "You did good." Max looked at Eleanor one last time, then stood. Not with hesitation, but with purpose. He gave her one soft lick on the hand, a gesture of goodbye, and stepped down from the bed. Rachel placed the red bandana in Daniel's hands. He knelt and retied it around Max's neck. "She'd want him to wear it home," he said quietly. And then, together, they walked out. The hallway lights buzzed gently overhead. Nurses moved around them in quiet respect. No one asked questions. No one stopped them. They all knew what had happened in that room. Outside, the night was cool. A soft breeze carried the scent of fall. Dry leaves, distant rain. Max lifted his head, sniffed the air, and let out a slow breath. As they reached the car, Daniel opened the back door, and Max hopped in without a sound. Rachel slid into the passenger seat. Daniel sat behind the wheel. Before turning the key, he looked at the hospital one last time, lit in quiet yellow under the night sky. "Let's go home," he said. This wasn't a story about death. It was a story about love. The kind that waits, that stays, that knows where it belongs. If you've ever loved a dog like that, or been loved by one, like, share, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. We read every comment.